Hi, and thanks for watching the video. I'm Todd Baginski. I'm a Microsoft MVP and the partner and CTO at Canvas. In this video, I'm going to show you how to install and set up the Event Organizer Power Apps sample template. The first thing we need to do to install is make sure we have all of our prerequisites satisfied. The first thing you'll need to do is sign up for Power Apps. I've obviously already done that. Then you'll need to have a Sharepoint Online Global Administrator account. I have that in the tenant that I'm going to be demoing on here. You also have to have a Power BI account and the Power BI desktop client installed. And finally, you'll need to clone this project to your local machine so you have all the code. After you've done that, the next step is to create the registrations Sharepoint list. This list stores the registrations for the different events. To create the list, we're going to use a site script to do that. So the first thing I do is I come to the page you see here and I download the SharePoint Online Management Shell. Then we open up the SharePoint Online Management Shell like you can see here on my screen in the bottom left. And after I have the management shell open, I'm going to execute some PowerShell commands that will actually allow me to install the site script that will create a site and automatically stand up that registrations list for me. So let's run through those commands now. The first thing that you need to do is change to the directory where you have cloned this repository, and in particular, go to the folder called Event Organizer. You can see I've already changed to that directory here on my local machine inside the SharePoint Online Management Shell. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to go through the documentation and you're going to make a couple replacements in the code. And the first thing you're going to do is set this variable name org name equal to the prefix of your particular SharePoint online instance. So in this case, it's candy3.sharepoint.com. So I have candy3 here. So first I will execute that command, I will set that variable, and then the next thing I'm going to do is call this PowerShell command here, and this is going to prompt me to log into that SharePoint tenant and authenticate myself. So here's where I'm going to log in with my global administrator account and do that. First I'll put in my username and then click the next button. Then I'll enter my password and click the sign in button. Now that I've established that context with my Office 365 tenant that I'd like to manage, then I'm going to execute this command, which is going to return the content out of this registrationslist.json file. You'll see this file in the repository after you have cloned it. This is essentially my site script. And we're going to pipe that data into the command add SPO site script, and we're going to give it the title of registrations list. So there's my registrations site list, and it has now been created. So after you create it, you're going to copy the ID for it, right, like that, and you're going to replace this ID placeholder inside of the next PowerShell commandlet to run. And this one is actually going to create a site design based on that site script. And you can see the name is Event Organizer here. And so now I have created a site design that uses that site script. When you're done with this entire installation process, you can come back here and remove the site script and site design as long as you don't need to create the site and that registrations list that the Power App relies upon. To do that, you would use the remove SPO site design first and then the site script. Both of them take a single argument, which would be the GUIDs associated with the identifiers for your site design and your site script. Now that the site design is installed, we can create a site from it that will automatically make the list that this sample relies on. To do that, we'll go to the SharePoint homepage in Office 365 and click Create Site. Then click Team Site, and in the drop-down for the site designs for the team site, pick Event Organizer. Then give your site a name. I'm going to call mine Events here. When you're done with that, click the Next button. And now the site will start to be created. You can add other owners and members here if you like. I don't need to do that for this video, so I will just click Finish, and now I'm redirected to the new site. On the right side of the screen, I can see that my site script is executing, and it is now creating or updating the list name registrations. You can see all the different columns and site columns and views that are created. And then when you're done, click View Updated Site. The page will refresh. Now you can come to Site Contents, and then you can click the registrations list, and you can see all the columns in the registrations list. Now, one thing you need to do is you need to put one value into the registrations list to ensure that the Power BI report will work. So I'm going to do that now. As you can see, I've created a new item in the list. Again, the reason we create this list item is because if the SharePoint list is empty, Power BI cannot publish the report successfully in the next step. So let's move on now and create a Power BI workspace. To create the Power BI workspace, what I'm going to do is go to app.powerbi.com and log in with an account that has a Power BI Pro license. After you've done that, click on Workspaces, and then at the bottom, click Create App Workspace. Then name your workspace. I'm going to name it Event Organizer, and I'm going to give its ID the name Event Organizer without a space inside of it. You can add other workplace members here if you'd like to do that as well, so they can view the particular reports as well. When you're done, click the Save button. And now you've created your Power BI workspace. The next thing we're going to do is create a Power BI dashboard within that workspace. To create the Power BI dashboard, what you want to do is go to the local file system where you cloned all the files from the repository and open up the eventorganizer.pbix Power BI file. Open that up inside of the Power BI desktop, just like this. Then click the Edit Queries option, and this will open up a new Power Query editor window for you. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to remove the existing registrations table right here. We right-click it, and then we select Delete. And then we will click Delete again, and now that takes that out of there. Next, what we want to do is close this Power Query editor window, so we're going to click File and then Close and Apply. So now what we need to do is we actually need to go get data from that new SharePoint list we just created. So to do that, we're going to click Get Data up here in the ribbon, and then we are going to select More, and then here we're going to type in SharePoint. And now we can see SharePoint Online List. We're going to select that and click Connect. Now what we do is we put in the URL to the SharePoint site where we created that list. So I can return to the web browser where we created that new list, and I can grab the URL by copying it, and then I can return to Power BI here and paste it in. So I want to take off the lists part of the URL so it just points to the sites. And then once I've done that, I click OK. That's going to ask you how you want to sign in. I'm going to pick the Microsoft account, and I'm going to sign in for that particular tenant. It'll ask me which account I'd like to use. I pick the account associated with that tenant. And then when I'm done, I will make sure that the URL to the registration site is what I've got in here. And there it is, my /sites/events site. So now I'll click Connect. Now what this is going to do is it's going to go off to that site, and it's going to show me all of the different lists that are in the site. And I'm going to select the one I'm interested in here, registrations. So I'll click that, and after I select it, then I will click Load. Now the data is being loaded in from the registrations list, and I'm almost done with this process. Now we can see that I have one item in there, and that person was registered because that's how I put my sample data. So what I will do now is I'll say File, click Publish, select Publish to Power BI. Now what I'm going to do here is confirm I'd like to save my changes first. And then here, I'm going to put in the event organizer workspace that I previously created. But first, I need to sign in to do that. Now that I've signed in, I can see the list of destinations where I can publish this to. I'm going to find my event organizer destination and select it like you see here. Then I'm going to click the select button. We're now publishing that particular report up to the event organizer workplace we previously created. And we can see it was successful. After you publish the report, then you come back to app.powerbi.com and you click on Workspaces. Then you select the Event Organizer workspace that you created. Once you've done that, go down into the Reports section and click the Event Organizer report. Then mouse over the report itself and look for this little thumbtack here that says Pin Visual when you mouse over it. Click the Pin Visual icon. It's going to ask you where you'd like to pin it. I'd like to put it onto a new dashboard, and I'm going to name that dashboard Event Organizer Dashboard. So I'll put that in the dashboard name text box and then click Pin. Now my Power BI report is completely configured and I'll be able to use it inside of the Power App. The next thing I'm going to do is start setting up the Power App. To do that, I'm first going to create a Sharepoint connection inside of Power Apps. To make that happen, I go to web.powerapps.com and I sign in with the credentials I used to sign up for Power Apps. Then in the menu on the left, I'll expand the data section and I will select Connections. Once you get here, click the plus New Connection button at the top of the page. In the search box, then type in Sharepoint. Once you see Sharepoint in the list, select it. Then pick Connect Directly and click the Create button. In the pop-up window, select the account that you logged in with. After you've done that, you have successfully created your connection that you can use in the Power App to talk to the data stored in your Sharepoint list. The next thing we're going to do is get the Event Organizer Power App. Now I'm going to walk you through and demonstrate how to install and configure the mobile version of the Power App, but these steps are exactly the same for the tablet version. The only difference is the zip file that you download and then import into your Power Apps environment will be different depending on if you use the mobile or tablet version. Here you can see as I'm looking at the files I've cloned from the repository that I have the Event Organizer mobile.zip and Event Organizer tablet.zip. These are the two files that correlate to the different form factors of the Power Apps that come with this sample. To add this particular Power App into my Power Apps environment, I'm going to go back to web.powerapps.com. I'm going to click the Apps button. Then I'm going to click the Import Package Preview link at the top. Once I get to this page, I'll click on the Upload button, and then I will navigate to the directory that contains the Power App packages, and I will select the one that I'm interested in. So as I mentioned, I'm going to do the mobile one, so I'll select that one and click Open. After I do that, the package is then uploaded, and the Power Apps framework is going to process that package and put it into my environment. When the import process completes, you'll see this page change like it did just there, and it indicates that we are now ready to configure how this gets imported. You want to verify that this import step right here for the app is set to create as new. After you've verified that's the case, click the Import button in the bottom right. This process can sometimes take a minute, sometimes it goes a little bit quicker than that. Essentially at this point we are now importing the app into our Power Apps environment, and shortly we will see a screen that indicates the package was successfully imported. Now we receive notification that the package was successfully imported, And now we can configure the Power App. To configure the Power App, go back to the Apps section. And after you've returned to the Apps section, you'll see the Event Organizer app is there. Click the ellipsis next to the Event Organizer Power App and select Edit. This will now start to load the Event Organizer Power App into the Power Apps editor. When prompted, provide permission to use the different connections that the Power App is using. In this case, it's the Sharepoint and the Power BI connection. So click Allow to allow those connections. Just like we did for the Power BI sample, we're going to remove the data sources and then add them back here. So to do that, I click the View button, I select Data Sources, then in the Data pane, I click the ellipsis next to Registrations, and I select Remove. Now we're going to actually connect to the registrations list that we created in our own environment. So again, back to View, Data Sources, and then we're going to click Add Data Source. Here we're going to select the Sharepoint connection that we made previously. So if we scroll down, we can find that connection in our list and select it, just like that. Now, you may see the site that you were working with before in your recent sites list here, but if you don't, it's very easy to put that list in here and access that site by just coming in and copying the URL here to the Sharepoint site. So I come back and grab the Sharepoint site URL, back to the Power App, I can paste that in and hit go. And now I'm talking to the same list that I created with my site design and site script that eventually made that registrations list. So I'm going to check that registrations list because that holds the data I want, and click Connect. Now after I've done that, I'm going to make sure I click File and save my work. I can then click the back arrow to come back to the editor. We're now going to configure the Power BI report that shows up inside of the Power App. To do that, in the Screens pane over here, select Reports Screen. Then, expand that area until you can find the existing Power BI 2 control and select it. After you've done that, head over to the right side of the screen in the Properties pane and click the URL that appears next to the data label. In the Workspace dropdown, we're going to select Event Organizer, and the dashboard, the Event Organizer dashboard, and finally the tile on that dashboard is Registration Status. Now we can see that we have the Power BI report successfully rendering inside of our Power App. Next, we'll click File, Save, and this time I will click Publish and publish this version so my changes are available to everyone in the organization. Part of this sample includes Microsoft Forms. So now we're going to set up our form inside of Microsoft Forms, which is part of the demo process and how this whole event registration works. To do that, I go to forms.office.com and I sign in with my work account. Then I click the New Form button. I'm going to change the form title, in this case to Contoso World Expo 2018. Then I'm going to click the Add Question button and select the type text. I'm going to update the question placeholder here, and I'm going to change that to first name, and I'm going to toggle that so it is a required field. Then I'm going to go and I'm going to add additional questions just like I did in the previous step to handle the last name, organization, email address, street, city, state, zip code, and phone number for people who'd like to register. The documentation describes the settings that you create for each column. As you can see, I have all the columns defined in here now, but I'd like to show you something about the state column. For the state column, you'll actually need to add all the options of all the different states here to allow users to pick from them. So I'm going to do that now and then come back. It's a good thing we don't have more than 50 states in the United States because it takes a long time to add them, but I've just got them all added in here now. And the form is saving all the time, so anytime you would exit or make a change here, your form is changed. So now what we're going to do is we're going to create a connection in Flow so that we can use this form. To create the connection in Flow, in your web browser, go to flow.microsoft.com, like you can see I've done here. Sign in with the same credentials you used to sign up for Flow. Then in the left menu, expand the data section and select Connections. Just like we did for the connection in the Power App, we're going to follow the same process to connect the Flow to that Microsoft form we just created. We'll click New Connection, then in the top right, we're going to type in Forms. After we type in Forms, we will see all the different ones come back in the list and we'll select Microsoft Forms. Then we will click Create and sign in with the user we wish to sign in with, and click their name. And then after we get that done, our connection will show up in the connection list. Here I can see the Microsoft Forms connection that we've created. Now that our connection is ready to be used by the Flow, we can import the Flow. To import the Flow, you're going to have to use the file that is the Flow export that we created. And you can download that file from the repository. The name of the file here is Event Organizer Notification Flow.zip. So I'm going to copy the path where this file exists and now proceed to import the Flow. To do that, we go to My Flows and we click the Import button. Just like we did for the Power App, we'll click Upload. We'll browse to the directory that has our Flow in it and click Open after we select it. This process is very similar to what we did with the Power App. First, the Flow is being parsed and different information about the package is being evaluated, and then we're presented with what we'd like to do. Make sure that your Event Organizer Notification Flow is set to Create as New. Down at the bottom, you're going to see that you need to modify the two resource connections for SharePoint and Office 365 Outlook to make them valid. To do that, click on the Select During Import here, and then you can pick on any valid connection that matches that type. So I'll just select the top one in the list and do the same thing for the steps below. Once we've got that done, you can see those red icons turn into these X's here, which means you're ready to import. So then you click the Import button here, and you can import that particular flow. Here we can see that all resources were successfully imported. So now we're actually going to perform the same steps because there's more than one flow that we are actually using in this sample. So I'll go back to My Flows, click Import, click the Upload button, and this time I'm going to click the Save Registration to SharePoint flow. That's our other flow. So I'll hit Open here. We'll go through the same import process and then configure it as well. The first part of the import process is complete. Just like we did in the last flow, make sure the import setup step for the flow is set to Create as New. Then go down to the connections and click Select During Import and pick one of the connections you made to that data source. So there's my SharePoint one and there's my one for flow. Now I can click the Import button to complete the process. Once the flow is successfully imported, you'll see this screen. Now we can move on to modifying the different flows to tie them into the data sources specific to our environment. After the flow has been successfully imported, click on My Flows on the left-hand side. Then, find the Save Registration Information to SharePoint flow and select the pencil icon to edit it. Now, you're going to configure this flow so that it works with your environment. The first thing that you'll do is you'll expand the invitee fill out registration action. Here you're going to remove the current form ID value, and instead you're going to select Contoso World Expo 2018 from the drop-down list. After you do that, expand the Get Registration information. In this action here, remove the current form ID, and again, select Contoso World Expo 2018. Finally, expand the Create Registration Record in SharePoint action. Change the site address and the list name to match the SharePoint list that you created that holds the registrations. So, just like I did before, I'm going to enter this custom value. I'm going to go back and grab the URL to that SharePoint site, put it inside here, and then delete the list name, and then select Registrations. Now that we've done that, we need to update all of the fields inside of here. So we'll start with Invitee Organization. And over here, we're going to select Organization from the pop-up menu of Dynamic Content. I'm going to repeat the same process for Invitee Email Address right here by picking the email address, the street address, and so on and so forth until I complete this portion of the configuration. Once I've configured all the fields, it will look like this. The documentation describes which values to put in as well. One thing to note is in the invitee name value right here, I have the first name value, and then I actually put in a space and then the last name here. When you're done, click Save. Next thing I'll do now that all of my configuration is done is play the Power App to make sure everything is configured correctly. To do this, I go back to web.powerapps.com and I select the environment that I'm working within. Then I click Apps, and then I click the ellipsis next to the Event Organizer Power App, and I select Play. Next, I'll be prompted to allow the connection to Power BI, and now I can see that the app worked correctly, and I have that one sample piece of data that I put in there. I can also navigate to the Reports section inside of the application to see the Power BI report rendering here. Congratulations! You're now done with the event registration sample setup. Please watch my other video that describes how to actually use the solution and walk end-to-end through it, which starts in the Microsoft Flow and ends in the Power App. We hope this video, as well as the sample, is very helpful for you and your organization and teaches you good patterns on how to develop with Microsoft Office 365 components. Thanks for watching the video, and I'll see you next time.